Here we go. The FBI is warning of an impending civil war as our nation has already begun to split apart. We're going to take a look at reaction to the FBI's warning. We're going to see what's really behind the calls for civil war. And make sure to stick with me at the very end of this video when I'll reveal how, in many respects, that civil war is already upon us. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. It's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. So make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. And gang, if you have $50,000 or more in an IRA, 401k, or savings account, you need to protect those assets from bumbling Biden's insanity with the timeless value of gold and silver. Click on that link below and talk to our good friends over at Gold Co. They're patriots just like us, and they want you to succeed so much that they're offering up to $10,000 in free silver if you open up an account with them. But this is a limited time offer, so don't wait. Click on that link below or visit my special website, turleytalkslikesgold.com. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. The Washington Times is reporting that the FBI is now officially warning of an impending civil war breaking out in the United States. This following supposed bomb threats against its D.C. headquarters following the unprecedented and absolutely unwarranted raid on President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago home in Florida. In a leaked bulletin, the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security said that they've seen an increase of what they're calling, quote, violent threats against law enforcement, government officials, and judges in the days following the FBI's raid of Trump's home. The bulletin warned of what they're calling, quote, general calls for civil war and armed rebellion against the federal government, calls that they are taking very, very seriously. Now, obviously, there's a lot of skepticism greeting these warnings coming from the very institution that has become so clearly weaponized by the Democrat deep state. Tim Pool wants to know, rightly in my view, why it is that the FBI is warning about dirty bombs and calls for civil war, all the while ignoring leftists actually admitting to actual violence. Tim points to the radical pro-abortion group Jane's Revenge, who are actually claiming credit for acts of vandalism and violence throughout the nation, and yet the FBI is yawning. They don't care. I mean, it's another example of the palpably obvious asymmetrical application of law coming from a clearly weaponized DOJ and FBI. We talked about this in yesterday's video. Victor Davis Hanson has documented the numerous cases of selective law enforcement that always seems to lean to one political aisle. What possible explanation is there for the FBI to raid President Trump's home to retrieve classified documents when in 2016, the then FBI Director James Comey refused to prosecute Hillary Clinton even after admitting she was guilty of destroying classified and subpoenaed emails? Why did the FBI target Project Veritas in a raid to retrieve the diary of Ashley Biden, Joe's wayward daughter, when they never pursued Hunter Biden's fraudulently registered firearm, his mysterious foreign income, his felonious crack cocaine use, or his regular employment of foreign prostitutes? Why is it that the FBI has publicly targeted Trump's advisors like Peter Navarro, Rudy Giuliani, Roger Stone? Yet terrorists and cartels can walk with impunity across the open border. We could go on and on and on. So obviously there are a lot of people today who share Tim's skepticism here, talking about civil war and mass insurrection from Trump supporters, all the while completely ignoring admitted violence on the left is yet another cringeworthy example of this ridiculously obvious asymmetrical application of the law. And Tucker Carlson isn't having any of it either. In last night's scorching monologue, he excoriated the fledgling Attorney General Merrick Garland's ridiculous attempt at turning the FBI and the DOJ into the victims in all this. How dare you question the integrity of the FBI? Yeah, right. But such skeptical cynicism duly noted, there is something very real regarding this concern over an impending civil war. I mean, all you have to do is peruse some of the headlines of late, like this one from the Financial Times. Is America headed for civil war? Not so subtle, is it? Or this one from the far left Guardian. With the end of Roe, the U.S. edges closer and closer to civil war. Or this one, during the George Floyd riots, is the United States on the brink of another civil war? And all of this is just the tip of the iceberg. In fact, in a poll that just came out literally a few weeks back, over 50% of those surveyed believe that a civil war in the United States will indeed erupt in the next few years. There's obviously a genuine concern that we're seeing nothing less than a full-blown civil war erupting here. And this is at least in part because we're beginning to see the making of what Marjorie Taylor Greene referred to as a national divorce. Some are calling it a massive red state secession that is indeed already underway. Whatever you want to call it, it's absolutely clear that the red state, blue state divide has not been more pronounced at any other time in over a century as it is today. The ultra-left-wing Robert Reich pointed out in his piece for The Guardian that super landslide counties, that's counties where a presidential candidate wins at least 80% of the votes, super landslide counties, they've jumped from 6% of all counties back in 2004 to 22% of all counties today. It's an astonishing leap, and it's exemplative of the fact that red states are getting redder while blue states are getting bluer. People are increasingly picking up and moving to be closer to those who share their own values. And that's because in one recent survey, it was found that 42% of registered voters believed that Americans in the other party were, quote, downright evil. And so a number of pundits have noted that in many respects, we've gone from talking about a national divorce to actually actively divorcing. If you want to understand what's happening today, you have to realize that a massive nation of over 300 million people is indeed dividing. It's decoupling itself. When all is said and done, we are increasingly becoming two fundamentally different and opposed nations within a single country. In many respects, this is exactly what I highlight in my new movie. Don't forget, tickets to the virtual pre-sale will be available starting in just a few days. Get on the wait list by clicking on the link in the description below or by going to turleyproductions.com. You're going to love it. What we have to understand is that our current political and cultural crisis is not a partisan clash over this issue or that issue. I don't think the clash that we all sense we're experiencing is a clash between this crisis or that crisis. The clash we're experiencing right now is not something within society. Gang, it's a clash over society itself. It's a clash between two fundamentally incompatible visions of life, globalists versus nationalists, secular versus post-secular, modern versus postmodern, materialist versus post-materialist. There are various ways and models in which scholars try to make some sense of this incompatibility. But what all the models boil down to is that the clash we're experiencing in our politics is not something within politics. It is a clash over politics itself, over the very nature of politics. For example, we're not clashing over whether this or that election was fair. We're clashing over the very nature of what a free and fair election actually is. Or think about how proponents of CRT and BLM are arguing. Our clash isn't between this event or that event in America. It's a clash over what it actually means to be an American. So what all of this means is that we're currently experiencing, in Sam Huntington's terms, we're experiencing a clash of civilizations within our nation. I'll say that again because I think it's so key here. We're experiencing a kind of clash of civilizations within our own nation. And this is why everything today is political and polarizing. Even kindergarten. Pronouns. Even pronouns today are controversial. Everything is political and polarizing, literally everything, because the clash is civilizational, which by definition involves everything. And so in light of this larger context, the FB raid and the political weaponization of the Department of Justice is only pouring oil on a fire that's already been burning for some time now. What Trump and the MAGA movement represent is nothing less than a renewed civic nationalism that is openly challenging the norms, the progressive liberal norms of globalism that our permanent political class is so desperately trying to hold on to. Trump and the new Patriot GOP represent the rising of a new post-Cold War, postmodern, post-secular world order that is indeed replacing the old modernist, globalist Cold War era. And that era, that old liberal progressive era, that more and more Americans want nothing to do with, they're doing everything they can to hold on to power. Let's pray that in this separation, things remain relatively peaceful. But I do fear that they won't. As always, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button, and you'll definitely want to check out my latest video on Trump winning as the FBI warrant absolutely bombs. You're not going to want to miss it, so make sure to click on that link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.